Welcome to the Elevate podcast. This series focuses on elevating and inspiring women and girls into or to remain in the tech sector from the classroom to the boardroom. I'm Kelly Kwarteng, founder and CEO of Helzac and host of the show. Episode of Elevate Women in Tech. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Jen Beattie, Head of Engineering at GivePanel. Jen took an unconventional route into tech after starting her career with a degree in fine arts whilst helping run a pub for a couple of years. Jen's journey showcases that tech is a realm for everyone, regardless of background. Brace yourself for an inspiring conversation about overcoming barriers, navigating imposter syndrome, and the importance of allyship on the path to tech success. Jen, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the episode today. And thank you for giving us your time.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be able to share my story and hopefully others can find it useful.
Perfect. Well, if it's okay with you, we're going to jump straight in and we're going to start right at the beginning. So if you could give our listeners some insight to who you are and what your current role is, that would be awesome.
Yeah, no worries. So I'm currently head of engineering at GivePanel. We're a really small company that started just before the pandemic. We've recently downsized, unfortunately, just before Christmas. So I was managing a team of 7, and now there's just down to 2 of us. My role itself is to manage the entire tech side of our application. So that's from the cloud infrastructure, all the CI/CD pipelines, right down to tech support. So I am the wearer of many hats. In my free time, though, I do volunteer. So I volunteer for a charity called Psychiatric Assistance Dogs. And I manage their application process, so more coding. But then on a non-coding side, when I'm not sat in front of my computer, I am actually training for a powerlifting competition. So fingers crossed I can get strong.
Wow, powerlifting. You're the first powerlifter, competitive powerlifter that I've had on the podcast so far. So good luck to you on that and wish you all the best. Your story is pretty unique. Obviously, shifting from a degree in fine arts and running a pub to now being the engineering manager or the head of engineering of an organisation. Can you give us a bit of a walkthrough as to how you made that career transition from fine arts to tech?
Yeah, so to be honest, when I was doing my GCSEs and when I was in school, nothing really inspired me. I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career. I knew I was good at making things, and I did a GCSE in fashion textiles and A-level in art. But back then, there wasn't really any career pathway into tech from a start. Now, I did actually go to an all-girls school. Whether that had any indication on there not being a sort of like pipeline into tech at that point. So I decided to go into something that I enjoyed and ended up doing a degree in fashion to start with. Didn't really get on with that. It was a lot of theory, a lot of paperwork, and I like to get very hands-on. So I switched into a degree in fine art. And during the degree, I ended up living and working in a local pub where I got my personal license, so I'm legally allowed to sell you alcohol, and became assistant manager. So that definitely gave me some additional life skills, shall we say. But yeah, during my university stint, I swapped universities partway through. So I moved from Southampton up to Sheffield to finish my degree. So the running of a pub was relatively short-lived, but definitely an experience. And yeah, when I finished my degree, I was kind of stuck. I knew I was not going to get a career in art. I'm not going to be the next Damien Hirst without an awful lot of struggle. So yeah, how did I get from art into tech? So at the end of my final year, I actually ended up building the website for our showcase event. And I probably spent far too much time on it than was needed. But I really, really enjoyed it. It was something that I could get my hands on. I could see it come to life. And yeah, much like creating art or fashion, it was sort of building stuff, but on a computer. And my boyfriend at the time, he was doing a degree in electronic engineering and said, why don't I look at building websites for a career? And that was like a light bulb moment. I'm like, can I do that? Like,
Is that a
can
thing?
I be a tech person? Like, it just never occurred to me until that point that could be a career. So I then went on a bit of a mission, built my portfolio, created loads of websites for my friends. And after jumping through many hoops, I got my first job as an intern for a web design company.
Wow, what an amazing journey. And it's interesting that you say that, when you were at school at GCSEs, you didn't have an idea of what to do, and it's so commonplace. And even now, where we are today, I think still there's so much work that needs to be done around schools at that kind of GCSE level, that tech careers are a career for everybody, and what the opportunities are. So it's great to see, obviously, the transition that you went on and that dramatic career pivot. And who knows where you would have been today if you hadn't have created that website for that final piece that you were working on in your degree. In terms of your journey then in tech, you've been in tech now for a number of years. What would you say are some of the biggest barriers or challenges that you faced as someone without a traditional tech background trying to break into the industry?
Definitely experience, or lack of it. So one of the main hurdles I had with the first role as an intern was experience. Everyone was expecting 2 years experience in a coding language or in some form of technology. And when you don't have a degree in computer science, how on earth are you supposed to get that experience? The only way that I did it, and I hate myself for doing it, was that internship initially was unpaid. So I basically had to volunteer at a company from it was only a month unpaid, in order to get the experience that I needed to then start progressing my career. Thankfully, after the month when I could prove that I could do the job, they gave me a paid job for the rest of the year, which is great. And nowadays, it's fantastic to see there are so many new coding initiatives. So that just didn't exist sort of 15, 20 years ago. There wasn't all of the coding schools online that you can do now. So yeah, trying to get that experience, trying to get your foot in the door to say, hey, I can actually do this job, but I need you to trust me a little bit, was definitely a challenge. And then the other thing is, yeah, just not having confidence in myself. It's one of those things that deep down you know you can do the job, but you just spend so long umming and ahhing at job adverts going, oh, well, I've not quite got any of those skills. Like, I could do it, but can I prove that I could do it? No. Well, then you just don't apply, and you just end up applying for so much stuff that's just not relevant. And yeah, it's just hard.
Perfect. And I think that confidence piece, when I speak to women in tech, especially when it comes to those applying for job adverts, is something that stops a lot of people. And that self-doubt, that kind of little gremlin in the back of your head saying you can't do that, when deep down, like you said, you know that you can, is such a key thing. So, the imposter syndrome is something that plagues so many in tech, but can be especially difficult for career switchers. So how did you navigate feeling like an outsider, or that doubt in your ability when you first started out? Because there's a lot of women that I talk to that are just starting out on this journey. They've maybe completed a boot camp, or they've got some experience, but really struggling to get that first step on the ladder, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd have to say most of the time it was with help from other people. I don't think I'd be where I am now if it wasn't for other people pushing me forwards. So just jumping back to that first role, I was there for about a year, after the unpaid month, before I moved back to my hometown of Bristol, which is where I am now. So I essentially had to start again. I'd got a year's experience in a sort of web design role, but not enough then to take that next step. I ended up spending forever looking for jobs, and obviously bills still need to be paid. And I ended up just taking an admin role to cover the bills and just keep me going. And funnily enough, during that that role, so we had an induction at the beginning, where sort of all the new people that had just joined all sat around a table, and they asked us, why had you applied for this admin role, and like, what did you want to do with your career? And I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to be brutally honest. And I said, to be honest, I'm here for the money. I don't really want to be an admin. I want to be a developer. And I don't know what made me say it, but I'm so glad I did, because there was a chap in the same induction, and he'd actually just joined as a web developer. And he collared me afterwards and said, why don't you apply for a role here? Now, they were looking for PHP developers, of which I was not. Had no idea what even PHP was. And that was the imposter syndrome kicking in, going, no, I couldn't possibly apply for a job here. Don't have the skills. I couldn't possibly do it. So I carried on with my admin role for a few months. And this chap dropped me another email and said, look, they're really struggling to find developers. You should apply and see what happens. You've got nothing to lose. So I applied. I was very clear when I applied for it. I didn't know PHP, but I try and sort of work it into my spare time, see if I could learn a bit and see how I get on. During the interview process, they actually set me a challenge to create a login process using PHP. And although I couldn't actually get it to work, I could walk them through the steps that I took to do the process and explain where I got stuck and what the problems were. And because I could do that, rather than doing the actual work, they hired me.
Oh, wow.
But they sort of hired me at the bottom in order to grow, because I could prove that I had the logical skills and the transferable skills to solve the problem. I just needed more time. Then, I got the job in the end, which was my first role as an actual developer, which is great.
It's amazing.
But one of the things is, if that chap hadn't said apply here, would I have applied? And I really don't know if I would have done.
No, you would have been
Imposter
the admin,
syndrome.
and who knows how long it would have took you then to get that first step in. And I think, hats off for you having that confidence, because others wouldn't, because it's your induction, it's your job. It's like, am I really going to say what I really want to do? And actually, I think that's a great example of, I'm here to do a job for you, but I ultimately want to get to there. It opens doors. And I think sometimes it's being confident enough to try and get those doors open. And, to whoever that the gentleman was, whether he's ever going to listen into this podcast, hats off to you for being that sponsor, being that ally in that room to say, hey, you can do this, and I think you should, and then following it up as well, which is always great to hear, and sounds like a nice company to have been at as well, especially for your first official tech role. In terms of that point then, so I think it brings us on quite nicely onto relying on allies and mentors to help guide us through careers and, starting out, but also navigating your career within tech. So why do you think allyship is crucial, both for individuals trying to break into the industry, but also for creating an inclusive culture for others?
Yeah, I can't stress just how important allyship and mentoring is for those at the beginning, and for those that really lack confidence or just don't know where to go. So going in that first PHP role that I had, I actually ended up with a fantastic team leader. He wasn't particularly assigned to me as a person, but he was my champion. He would literally sit down with me and explain all sorts of the career paths that I could do. As a brand new person to tech, he would sort of go through everything, and not just in that company. So if there weren't sort of career paths that I wanted to go down in that particular role, he'd be like, well, have you considered these other ones? And he just gave me confidence to believe in myself and my ability. And I think that is just super crucial for anyone that's sort of starting out, just to get that little bit of confidence in yourself to be like, I can do this. This is where I need to go. And the same, it goes for people in the industry, or for companies themselves to create an inclusive culture, is to not necessarily offer mentorship, but offer something similar. So something like a buddy system,
Yeah.
or a team leader that's a really good team leader that's really going to coach you and really going to help you like move forwards with your path, and show you what you can do, basically.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more that we can support people on, even if it's they're stepping into their first role or they've been in the industry for a while and they're just trying to navigate where to go next. I've been to quite a few events over the last couple of weeks and spoken to a lot of different people, and it's interesting. I spoke to a lady who was well into her career. She'd been in tech for well over nearly 40 years, and one of the things she highlighted to me was that she's never had a mentor. And I was like, wow. And she worked for quite a large organization. And I was just really shocked by the fact she was very senior as well. And she's like, I've never really had an official mentor. Had some people that have helped me along the way, but I've never been on an official mentoring program and things like that. So I think if an organization doesn't have the funds, the resources, or the ability to set up a mentoring program, a buddy system, like you said, is just a perfect way for anyone joining an organisation. I'm a big advocate. Back when I ran big teams, we didn't have official mentoring programs all the time, and we had different programs that were just for select people, or it wasn't for everybody because you just can't mentor everybody all of the time. But what we had was everybody got a buddy, and they remained with that buddy for an official 6-month period. But what you found was those buddies then become mentors, and it went on a natural journey of kind of unofficial mentorship paths within some of the organisations that I've been involved
That's what
with.
we've got that give panel as well. We do the buddy system, so a new starter will come in and they'll get assigned a person that's like got similar interests.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily in the same department because it's good to be outside your own department, but we'll buddy up with people, and then you know that you've always got somebody who's got your back. Like if you get stuck, you can go to that person, which I think is just really useful, especially as a new starter when you're like, oh God, I don't feel safe. Who can I speak to?
Yeah, where do I go? What do I do? No, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's great to hear that Give Panel offer that as part of your organisation and how you work. In terms for people that are listening in who are maybe sitting there thinking, wonder what some of the like practical ways that I could be a better ally. And I'm talking here not just to the men, because sometimes when we speak women in tech, we always think it's men that have to be the allies. But I think women, we need to be allies to ourselves and to the other women within the industry. So what are some of the practical ways that men and women can be better allies to women in tech, especially for those coming from non-technical backgrounds trying to enter and grow their careers?
I'd say to be open and be available. I know that really doesn't sound like much, but some of the problems do come from knowing who you can talk to. That's not going to be a condescending idiot or just a total jerk. It's sad to say there are still people out there that believe tech is literally just for men, and they will make it really hard for women trying to join the space. And I think it's about having that psychological safety at work, where we can feel safe to voice an opinion, or a suggestion without being shut down for lack of experience or just for being a woman. So knowing who you can turn to for help is super helpful or super useful. It's one of those things that creating a safe space at work means that you can be more open, you can learn more, you can generally just be a better person, I think. And it's just the kind of basic stuff. But yeah, be open.
Yeah. And then I think I couldn't agree more, because when you're open, you're actually your true self. And then when you're your true self, you just bring a better version of you to the job, and then your work's better and everything else. It all just snowballs through to just being a better place of work.
I think one of the other points as well, which I don't like, and it is true, is that, and you mentioned about men, not just men, but women as well. Women, I find women can be very bitchy. And it's one of those things that it never really, it comes up in conversation periodically, but not very often. And I think women can do a lot more to like push other women and say, like, lift them up.
Yeah.
And just be like, hey, you can do this, rather than being like almost like the jealousy side of it, or not necessarily jealousy side of it, but the side where, yeah, that it's just a bit bitchy, and I don't quite know how else to say it other than that. So it's just kind of calling that out and saying like, hey, this is happening, like, let's support each other, let's prove that we can do this. But yeah.
No, I agree with you. And I think sometimes, I suppose it's kind of, some women see other women navigating through as a threat, and it's that they're not a threat. We're all in it together, and we're all rising up together. Exactly. And I think, one thing that I always say to the women in tech that I meet, that are new to tech, or they're navigating and trying to find their way, or looking for career growth, is get yourself involved in a network, find yourself a community of people that can lift you through those hard times, but also share those great times that you have as well. Because then you just feel like you're constantly moving forward. And there's loads of them out there. I think there's fewer women that aren't allies, but they still exist in workplaces and organizations, and they're always there. But the more that we can come together as a community, as women in tech, I think it helps us navigate through. And, I think even on the male side, yes, there are a lot of men that don't believe women belong, but there's also some fantastic allies that are out there as well. So I think for people, don't be put off, go and find them, and they will support you on that journey. Obviously you work as a head of engineering, you've ran teams from a tech perspective. So for companies wanting to promote better allyship, what strategies, training, or initiatives have you seen be effective in fostering a culture of active solidarity? I can't say the word.
So there's two main ones that I've seen, and some that we employ at GivePanel. The main one, which I'm a huge fan of, is the culture of candor. So this is something I super strongly believe in, and it does go back to that psychological safety aspect and the psychological safety at work. It's almost a bit like team mentoring, where you can come together as a team. No idea is a stupid idea, and there's like no blame culture. So it strips back that fear of making mistakes, and it just enables people to grow without that fear of reprisal. Like, oh God, I've made a mistake. I'm going to get told off, or something's going to happen, or people are just going to think less of me.
Yeah.
And if you take that away, then I think people can grow a lot faster and grow a lot more. It's all about calling out that unwanted behavior in the workplace and feeling safe to do so. So where you do have that one person that's probably not helping you at all and is potentially being a bit rude, it's being able to go to your manager and say, hey, look, I'm feeling really uncomfortable around this person. I don't know what to do about it. And they would go away and say, okay, great, thanks for raising this. I'll handle it from here on. And then they go away and solve the problem with that person.
Yeah.
And there's no reprisal back on the person that's raised it, that it suddenly like spread to the whole company, or everyone knows about it, or any of that sort of stuff. It's much easier to be able to say like, hey, I put my hand up, I've made this mistake, I'm really sorry, I really want to get over, like, I want to fix it, I want to help, and move forwards. And I think having that culture of candor really, really helps with that. And then the other one, which we talked about, is mentoring. So as we said before, just going back to something as simple as the buddy system, when you first join, and just matching you up with someone that you know has got your back. Those are two, I think, really simple initiatives that companies can implement like from today. They don't need you to go away and start planning and then project plan and have a like roll out to X, Y, and Z at this time. It's something that you can literally start tomorrow. So yeah, I'm all for that.
Perfect. Love that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think some companies overthink their whole strategy around how they can be more inclusive, or they get so stuck in not having a strategy that it then like cripples them to not be able to actually do anything. And sometimes it's just starting off with those small gestures, those small steps that then can lead you into bigger projects, bigger programs, and everything else. And they're two great examples of real simple things that organizations could do to kind of make impact within their workplaces. For any women listening in who may be considering a career change, and we do get quite a few women that are in that space and they're looking to move into tech from non-traditional backgrounds, what advice would you give to them on taking those first steps?
I suppose it depends whether they've got the technical skills to start with, or whether they're going from something completely like different, like from sales into a tech role. If it's like a coding role, then I would recommend to try out some of the new coding initiatives. Code First Girls is one that just springs to mind, and Coding Academy's been going for a while. And then I think once you've got some experience of coding under your belt, you can start applying for junior entry-level roles. If you're switching careers from like a management level, I think it's a little bit different. But I think in that instance, in both respects, I think it doesn't really matter if you don't have all the requirements for a role that you're looking at. Apply anyway. And this goes back to the imposter syndrome, where you won't apply for a job because you don't have the skills. But 9 times out of 10, you probably will have the skills. They'll be transferable skills. So you'll have those skills from your previous roles, your previous career. As long as you can translate those skills into a tech role, then you have all the requirements that you need. And I think it's just ignoring some of those. Like if you don't have a degree in in computer science or a computer related degree, I think that's fine. I think you can apply anyway and just ignore it. And as long as you can say, hey, look, I've got all these transferable skills, this is why you should hire me, then yeah. And I think the only other thing would be to don't get disheartened when people don't reply to applications. When I was first starting out, I lost track of the hundreds and hundreds of amounts of applications I made. And very rarely would you hear back unless it was for somebody that would set up an interview. I had one just before this role, actually, I think, where I'd applied for a random role just before a Christmas, I think. And then probably about 6 months later, when I'd already got a job, I suddenly got an email saying, hey, I've been unsuccessful for this role. I was like, that's not helpful. So don't get disheartened when that happens. Yeah. Just keep going. Keep
on going. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Just keep getting those applications out there, particularly if you are, first job or career switching over. I think the other thing that I've been given this advice from others, and I think it's a really good one, and I think you've just shown that it can happen as well, is seek out where you currently work, share what your goals are, and you never know, there might be opportunities for initiatives to move into different departments, get experience, get a sabbatical, anything like that, where you can get yourself out there to be able to see whether there's an opportunity, particularly if you work for one of the big organizations that are hiring. You've been there, you've built up your credibility, so to speak. They know who you are, they can vouch you as a person. Giving you a shot at something like a junior developer role might be something that's available, and have heard that happen. It's not often, but it's definitely worth giving it a try and asking out. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for obviously sharing a lot of wisdom that you've given us today on your personal experiences and your own journey as well. It's been a really insightful discussion. But before we wrap up, what would be your top 5 tips for women that are listening in, that are looking to take that leap into tech, or for companies on being more inclusive for hires of women or men from non-traditional tech backgrounds?
So going back, my top one is that culture of candor, that being really open and honest, as a person and as a company. It works both ways. I think that to me is my number one top tip right at the top. Second one would be to look for a mentor, especially if you don't really know where you want to go in your career, and what your opportunities are out there. A mentor will be able to help you with that, and at least point you in the right direction of what you can do and where you can go. Number 3, for individuals looking for work, to find a recruiter that actually is an active supporter in women in tech. There's a number of people in my LinkedIn network that have messaged me and said, hey, we're actively looking for women in tech. We've got some great roles to fill. So it's always worth looking for people that are in the similar kind of mind frame. And as you mentioned, going back to the Women in Tech sort of networking, get yourself in a network, and that will be super, super useful. Number 4 was for companies that are looking to be more inclusive, to go away and review your application process, and make it less, I don't know what the word is, less precise. It's possibly not quite the right word, but where you're looking for specific requirements, i.e. must have 3 years experience, must have a degree in computer science, you could kind of change that to must have a degree in computer science or relevant skills, and make it a bit more rounded, so that you're going to get more women in tech applying. Not women in tech, but more women applying. And then the last one, which applies to everything in general, to life, is just to be kind. If you could be anything, be kind. It costs you nothing, and it will get you everywhere. So
love that. Love the top 5 tips, and couldn't agree with you more. I think if we can all be kinder to ourselves and kinder to each other, and the world's just a much happier place for us all to navigate in together, because life can be hard at times, and you never know what someone's going through or what they've been through, so to speak. So yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your incredible journey into the tech world. Really appreciate you being here.